This past week, we got word that Warner Brothers Discovery were kind of taking San Diego Comic-Con 2022 off. Specifically, DC Comics will have essentially no presence at the con, which is pretty much unprecedented. I said, hey, that could be a bad thing. That's one of the few times a year DC Comics can really shake their tail feathers. But I have a friend who's involved with Comic-Con who says otherwise, and that would be Aaron Sparrow. How you doing, Aaron?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. So you've been on the San Diego Comic-Con committee before, or are you now?
I'm still listed on the committee. Like, I still get the emails and things like that, but I don't attend the meetings anymore. But I was an active member of the committee for about 20 years.
So you've seen kind of the inner workings of San Diego Comic-Con and kind of what it brings to the table as far as marketing and promotion. Why do you think it's not that big a deal for DC to skip it? And do you think other people besides just Warner Brothers Discovery will kind of wake up and maybe start skipping San Diego Comic-Con?
I think it's already started to happen. I think, especially with the, Comic-Con, first of all, they get a huge amount of attendance. And they're very puffed up in their thinking that, somehow it's because of this mystique of San Diego, Comic-Con International. And nothing could be further from the truth. The reason that show is so heavily attended was all of the toy companies that would come and bring exclusives. So what it essentially is it's eBay Flipper Con. So you have a bunch of people come in who are trying to buy the exclusives and then flip them on eBay for more money. That's largely the crowd that goes there. The pandemic kind of taught these companies like Hasbro and Mattel that they don't need to do that. They don't need to have the expense of having a booth, having a bunch of employees there, putting them up in lodging, paying them while they're there, giving them their per diems for, food or whatever, and then shipping all of that product there to sell at the show when they can just throw it up on, Hasbro Pulse during Comic-Con and completely sell out. So that expense is not needed. And that's a big reason why you're seeing like Hasbro this year is not going to have any physical exclusives at the convention. You'll be able to get QR codes that you can order with or something like they did at Star Wars Celebration. But yeah, there's no reason to invest all that money anymore because they don't need Comic-Con.
It's crazy. Yeah, San Diego Comic-Con seems to think that Comic-Con International is the brand that people are going to attend. But I'd imagine like 90% of the attendees don't know it's actually Comic-Con International. They just call it San Diego Comic-Con, and the brand really is kind of the city and the experience of going there to a comic convention in the hall and, seeing some trailers and whatnot and maybe going to Artist Alley. But I think it's really the experience and not really their brand itself that brings people to it.
No, they have no brand. That's one of the things that's really interesting is they've tried to rebrand as Comic-Con International. They've tried to make that a thing, but it's really not. Everybody still refers to it as San Diego Comic-Con. And to the general public at large, there is no difference between that con and any other con. You'll run into people who will be attending like a Comic-Con in Phoenix, and they think it's part of the same organization that does San Diego. They just think all cons are related. So they have a serious branding problem in that respect. Their other big problem, if the city of San Diego ever wakes up, which I don't know that it will because that would involve politicians knowing what the hell is going on around them. But if the city of San Diego ever wakes up to the fact that Comic-Con threatening to leave is a bluff, they say like, oh, well, we'll go to Vegas or we'll go to Anaheim. And the city's like, oh, we don't want to lose all that revenue. The fact of the matter is San Diego is the draw. If Comic-Con International left, screwed off to Anaheim, which would be a much smaller show, or to Vegas, which not as many people are going to want to go to, and there's going to be more things fighting for your entertainment dollar over there. There would not be as much money in the room. You've got gambling. You probably at that point you'd probably have hookers dressed like the
fights. You'd probably have a UFC show.
Yeah, hookers dressed as the Scarlet Witch. Lots of things to draw away those nerd dollars. They actually can't do that. They will lose a huge amount of money and they'll lose a huge amount of influence if they move. So it's all a bluff to the city of San Diego. And I've been on the committee and I know it's a bluff because they outwardly talk about how, it's basically just to strong arm the city into giving them more concessions, to spending more money, for busing and things like that and sharing the costs. But the city of San Diego could call their bluff, and ReedPop could move in the first year that Comic-Con International is gone, and the general public at large would have no idea that anything had changed.
I do know a lot of people say that the facilities, like where the con is held, needs to expand. Some of the halls need to get bigger and stuff like that. But you would expect maybe if San Diego Comic-Con really wanted that, they would probably go halvesies on the bill and whatnot, just not expect the city to finance all of it.
No, and the fact of the matter is that if these vendors pull out that offer these exclusives every year that people are actually coming for, you're going to see attendance shrink quite a bit. it's the show's not going to be in as demand, and you're not going to need all that extra convention space.
Yeah, it's crazy. Obviously, it's called a Comic-Con, but it's not really about comic books anymore. It's like the real Comic-Cons are like in hotels. There's maybe like, 4 or 5 guests and some retailers show up with comic books. But if you actually go one of these things, it's called a Comic-Con. Like, it's nothing to do with comic books anymore. What does DC or Marvel even get from this anyway?
No, they don't really get anything. I mean, you're not really increasing awareness. You're just spending a bunch of money. I think Zaslav made the right decision in pulling out of San Diego. It's expensive, and the benefit isn't there. The other thing that's interesting about all this is that Comic-Con, for the fact that it is called Comic-Con, comics are kind of the redheaded stepchild of that show now. Artist Alley gets pushed and, shrinks every year, and just gets smaller and smaller, and your table gets smaller and smaller. And pretty soon you're going to have artists on little TV trays. And now they're starting to charge for that. They used to give artists, that for free. And I'm sure, within a couple of years, they'll have pushed they'll push artists to a separate location where they, won't even be worth the money. They'll be like in the restroom of a Chili's to go down the street.
Yeah, we do though. There's a lot of this culture with Comic-Cons and stuff like that. It sounds like it's a fun time. I probably would just hop in a cab and go to Tijuana or something, but you can get just as much trouble if you stay at San Diego Comic-Con and hang out with the comic pros.
You absolutely can go to the Hyatt bar, and you'll have a story on the beat about yourself in just a couple of hours. Because you'll either if you're a comics pro, you'll either attack somebody, or if you're a fan, you'll be attacked by a comics pro. We joke around, but it's a serious problem. It doesn't make the industry look good. There's a lot of bad behavior that goes on, and has been documented over the years. So it's best just to avoid the whole thing if you can. It's an interesting spectacle to go to San Diego. It's big, and for normies, it's really interesting because it's like, oh man, there's so much to look at and so much visually. But if you've been going year after year, it's the same floor plan every year. Gentle Giant comes with the same booth. Like all these companies just kind of have the same booth. And where I kind of became disillusioned with it was they had pushed out a bunch of comics retailers and things like that over the years, and like Bud Plant saying that it's too expensive, it's not worth it, I'm not going anymore. So big graphic novel vendor gone, and they had devoted a huge amount of the floor to Disney for this giant pirate ship from Pirates of the Caribbean. It was just this massive thing, and I walked up to it and I asked one of the employees that was working there. I said, "What's this all about?" And they were like, "Pirates of the Caribbean is coming out on DVD." And I was like, "Yeah, I figured. I mean, that's what happens with movies. They come out on DVD or Blu-ray. At the time it was DVD. But, they're like, yeah, it's coming out. Do you want a bandana? I'm like, all right. So I take the bandana. But that was the whole reason that they were there, was just to tell you something that you already knew. And there was this huge amount of expense that Disney had put into having this giant pirate ship, created and assembled just to tell you something you already knew. It seemed ridiculous to me. And, when you could have packed in a bunch of vendors that, people actually, would have spent money with and would have cared about.
Yeah, it's really just changed the flavor of the Comic-Cons themselves. I mean, it's really just for premiere trailers and, a couple of panels, maybe Robert Downey Jr. or somebody important shows up. Otherwise, I think a lot of people just kind of skip it. Other than, like you said, the exclusives, really DC Comics will have no presence there. All the Warner Brother Discovery, except for, there's probably going to be something about Black Adam and Shazam and stuff. Otherwise, they're just kind of skipping it. And you say that there's no value lost by skipping out on it. You think it's actually just a good decision all around, even though you've been in San Diego Comic-Con, all part of the committee, and obviously supported it.
Yeah, no, people are only, it's like most of the people there are there for freebies, that aren't the ones that aren't there to make money by flipping exclusives. There's people that are just looking for the floor, like, they walk around, they're like, oh, is this free? Is this free? Is this free? They're just looking for those kinds of things, which also end up on eBay. So, without that, you're just giving away a bunch of product. You're spending a bunch of money to be there and not really, getting any bounce from it. I mean, look at the huge presence that the Scott Pilgrim movie had there. There's been so many movie premieres, and it's like, yeah, this got really great buzz at Comic-Con, and then it comes out and it completely flops. There's just not a benefit to these companies to be there. And I think that the smarter your company is, the sooner they'll pull out of Comic-Con, the way that DC did, and the way that we're kind of seeing, Hasbro and Mattel and everybody scale things back. Obviously, maybe they still want to be at the show so they can direct people to their website where they'll sell their exclusives, but they're no longer going to really focus on having them at the show and dealing with those time crunches and shipping and all of those nightmares that, all those logistical problems they have to deal with in order to make this happen.
Disney and Star Wars kind of started this trend when they started up D23 and Star Wars Celebration, where they're like, you know what, screw it. I don't want to have to go to San Diego Comic-Con and play second fiddle to anything. I'll bring everybody down here to like Disney World. We'll make a whole lot more money. And then all the focus of the entire event and everything coming out will be what we wanted, and we'll be able to control everything. There's always a lot of material that's supposed to be exclusive to the con that obviously makes it onto YouTube, and they can't really control it like they can in their own environment.
And the benefit to Disney for D23 is that they do get to control that narrative. They get to have it all in one section. And then, if you're flying out for D23, it's right across the street from Disneyland. You're going to go over there and you're going to spend some money at the park. So it's a much smarter move. It's much more savvy. And it's people don't need to attend Comic-Con anymore, I think. And it'll be interesting to see this year how the pandemic has kind of like broken people's habits.
Well, we know there's some rules there that I don't think they're going to go over well with a whole lot of people. But as somebody that's been on the committee, obviously we've got somebody that is currently on the mailing list at least, but used to be an active part of the San Diego Comic-Con committee. Like, what goes on there? Have you suggested changes in the past that you think could make it a better experience, or maybe liven it up? Like, did any of that stuff happen?
Yeah, I tried for years to get, better content, better creators, there's just, more comic focused content, more nerd content. I'm actually responsible for bringing the Tournament of Nerds from the UCB theater over to San Diego, and that was like pulling teeth. They would rather have, you'll go and like some company, like, at the time, so let's say around like, 2012, 2013, you would have Boom Studios and they would have like 6 panels and they'd be sparsely attended. But like we could bring in something like Tournament of Nerds that would pack the house and have a line that we had to, tell, sorry, we're out of room. Just so like I was trying to bring entertainment that was more universal and more, comic focused and would get people excited. But, it was like butting your heads against the wall because the way I used to describe it is that the board used to be just a bunch of Immortan Joes just sitting up there breathing into their gas masks. They don't read comics anymore. They don't care about, they don't have their finger on the pulse of anything that's happening currently, but they liked comics in the 70s and they've never been a part of anything that's cool. And now that Comic-Con has this like cool like thing attached to it because, Hollywood was coming in and the toy companies were coming in, they didn't want to let go of that power. So they would just sit up there, with their oxygen tanks, wheezing into them. There are some good people on the board now. There are some good people. There are good people that work there. There are people that want to change things and want to update things. But there's just a lot of there's just a log jam of much like with we see with Marvel. There's just a log jam of people that have been there too long that need to get out of the way so that people with fresh ideas can come in.
Well, I know a lot of people do like San Diego Comic-Con. They like going there for the convention. They like kind of all the things that are around it. So I hope they're at least able to keep up the status quo that they have right now. But when you have people constantly pulling out, finally realizing maybe the amount paid to go to Comic-Con and the amount of expenses that are paid just to be there don't really benefit you in the long run. Just having a cool booth really doesn't make a whole lot of money. You can make that money in other ways. So I hope more companies don't just like do a mass exodus, but I wouldn't blame them.
No, it's the cost outweighs the benefit for a lot of the big companies. There's still vendors there, and that's what there should be more of because that's what a lot of people go for. Is a lot of people go for vendors, and that's why the vendors tend to make decent money. Is because people are going looking for things that they can't find. Not everybody lives in Southern California and has access to the Frank and Son show where you can just go and find almost any collectible that you're looking for. A lot of people come from out of state and, their state doesn't have anything like that. So, they go looking for those vendors. And for a lot of years, the vendors were kind of getting squeezed because, the costs keep going up for these booths because Comic-Con has this inflated sense of its own importance. So, I'd like to see more of an equilibrium reached. I'd love to see the city of San Diego tell them to F off and, go to Anaheim, go to Las Vegas, and then move, have Reed Pop move in and maybe run a different kind of show. But we'll see. We'll see if, see what happens.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like some of the companies out there, specifically Fan Expo, sounds like they are killing it. People are really enjoying the shows that they're putting on. So they want to think that they're the only brand in town, but nobody thinks about San Diego Comic-Con as San Diego International. It's just a Comic-Con that's in San Diego. And really, I think any company could kind of replace them there. So I do want to say thank you very much to Aaron for spitting some facts and giving us some really good insight on this.
Yeah, let me just throw a couple of Comic Cons out there for people who want to go and have the experience but don't want to deal with all the nonsense of San Diego. Bell County Comic Con, which I was invited to last year by Tim Lim. They brought me out. That was a fantastic show. Just enthusiastic crowds, there for comics and really excited about them. Rose City in Portland is a really good show. And the Fan Expos. I just did Dallas Fan Expo with Merck, and that show was fantastic. Great crowd, great energy.
If you need some more information about DC Comics basically being dropped from Comic-Con San Diego 2022, whatever you want to call it, I actually have this video breaking it kind of all down, what's going on, how this could negatively affect DC Comics. Really interesting stuff, and we'll see about the future of San Diego Comic-Con.